Carly and I'm back again with another review. So I asked you guys in the last video which figure you'd like to see me review next, and in our Spider-Man No Way Home series, the next figure you guys voted for was our Jonah Jameson. So I'm really excited to talk about this figure. I'm really excited to talk about his appearance in the movie. J.K. Simmons has been my favorite, bar none, Jonah Jameson forever. I really don't think another actor could do him justice. So this is really exciting for me, even though it's kind of a simple figure. But this will be a perfect example to illustrate what I was talking about before when we looked at our Shriek figure, who you can see I finally got up here with my Carnage. That if we're going to have a one-off in a series, and this obviously isn't a one-off, but that rather than doing that, I would much rather have seen a MJ or a Ned or maybe even a Flash. Like a regular person action figure in the context of a film can be really, really satisfying, and this is a great example why. While Shriek is a nice looking figure, it was just sort of outside of the box for the particular No Way Home series, and this figure will show you why I believe that they should always sort of keep the figures in line with the series they're talking about, because it can work really, really well. So with all that said, and kind of giving away how I feel about him, let's go ahead and take a look at our Jonah Jameson. So the great thing about this figure is that with the new facial sculpts that we've been seeing for the last maybe couple of years, he looks absolutely perfect. And we got some really, really solid accessories with this figure too. So the funniest thing about the accessories on this figure is the head swap. So I obviously put the head on him that makes the most sense, the screaming angry head, because that's how we see him most of the time in the movie. But he also came with just a generally grumpy head, which is equally fantastic. So the head sculpts on both of these are amazing. We're getting, again, detailing in the hair that we haven't seen in the past iterations of Marvel Legends figures, so I'm always loving that. But of course, I wanted to use the angry screaming head. I feel like Jonah Jameson in the Marvel universe has really come into his own in this final installment of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, or the third installment of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. He is just lost his mind with vengeance-seeking fury. All he wants to do is take down Spider-Man. And I think it is so funny the way they portray him in this movie as almost an Alex Jones type InfoWars creator. And however you feel about him, I do think it's really telling that so on the packaging, they included the Daily Bugle graphic and background that they used in the film. I'm going to try to include a picture somewhere here from the movie where now he's sitting in this dark little studio behind a desk with his graphic going behind him, just hollering at the crowd about Spider-Man. I think it is so timely and relevant and funny and really captures his character so well. I loved this Jonah Jameson, and we're finally getting a figure that looks just like him. Although I do think that the Spider-Man vintage Jonah Jameson was really nice, and I will be taking a look at him eventually. I've got all of those figures down here. I haven't gone through them all yet, but we'll look at that too. But as far as the cinematic version, this one is spectacular. So when we're looking at our Jonah Jameson, obviously we're not going to be looking for a super articulate figure, although this one really does deliver there too. We're getting this figure put on the same suit that we saw on our Stan Lee. Whenever we see this suit, there's going to be a lot of things that sort of obstruct movement, but overall he really does what he needs to do. He has articulate points that allow him to point, holler, pound his fist, all of the things that you expect Jonah Jameson to do. I really need to get a desk accessory to go with this figure because, I mean, he just belongs on my shelf always. The sculpt is so nice though, and even in spite of the suit obstructing, we do get a slight ab crunch, which is really great. The head moves in all directions, which is great. He has a turning waist with actually a really detailed belt and buckle that are difficult to see, but are on there, which is kind of nice. He has the turning bicep, the double jointed elbow that works beautifully, the angry hands. We've got another set of hands that are just his splayed hands, which this one has a wedding band, and made me really curious what Mrs. Jameson is like. I'm very curious to know more about her. We're not getting much lift here in the hip articulation. Obviously, we don't need it. He's mostly always sitting down, but we do have a thigh turn, a really great knee bend, no boot turn, and you know, I find that these like particular feet are always a little bit stiff and have a little bit less movement because of the ankle of the pants. They always just feel a little bit more difficult to manipulate, but they do really work from side to side. And I mean, you can get him to do what you need him to do, which is either sit or stand. So the main thing that I love most about this character is the facial sculpt, but when you go through everything, he actually works really functionally. And, you know, again, J.K. Simmons captures the character so well for me, and at this stage in the story, he's really sort of at a new level of unhinged. I think it's really great the way they portrayed him, and I love that they included the Daily Bugle background in the packaging so that I can actually have him doing his salty rants about Spider-Man. I think those will be really fun to recreate, and it's just such a funny character overall that he plays so perfectly well. So there isn't a whole lot to talk about and look at and work through with this figure. It's really just a great portrayal of the character, and that's why I think it fits so much better in this series. Even though he's a less dynamic action figure with kind of less going on than Shriek here, he really brings you back into the story and reminds you about why we loved No Way Home so much, and he just has a much more relevant place on the shelf next to our other characters than our Shriek does. And I really feel like this is a great example again of why we should just stick with the story that we're talking about rather than try to like introduce new characters through these lines. I think that there's a great time and place for introducing new characters, and I loved the supervillains line as a way to do that. And I think they should do something similar for Spider-Man supervillains. But as far as just injecting a character into a line kind of with no reason at all, it's a little frustrating to have not gotten other figures that I would have really loved to see, particularly Tobey Maguire, but we'll get those eventually, I'm sure. J. Jonah Jameson, though, is a really fantastic figure. You cannot beat his anger, his indignation, his determination, and you know, his professional flexibility to get done what he needs to get done as far as getting Spider-Man out of his way. So this is a wonderful figure, you guys. I think that in comparison to my vintage, I love this one more. I just am such a huge fan of J.K. Simmons. Whiplash is one of my favorite movies of all time, and him in this role is just, it gives everything a much more realistic, living, you know, vibe for me. I just love him in this role so much. So this is one of honestly my top figures, even though that sounds really silly. It just feels really satisfying to have him, and I definitely think everybody should pursue getting their hands on it. With 2 alternate heads and 2 sets of hands, as far as any other figure we're getting, that's a pretty good accessories pack right now. And I think that the Daily Bugle background actually counts as an accessory too, because I will be using it that way. So I hope you guys enjoyed this brief but very enthusiastic look at our own J. Jonah Jameson. I definitely think that you guys should try to track him down. He is very worthwhile, great looking, and functional. He'll do what you need him to do, and you cannot beat these face sculpts on this particular guy. So thank you guys so much for checking out this video. We are down to our final figure. I think what I'm going to do for our Spider-Man is compare it to my other Spider-Man figures. I'm really sort of interested to see how I feel that he stacks up against my favorite Spider-Man figure, or my favorite Spider-Man figures in my collection. So I think I might like to do that in a live stream, and then I'll do a separate video for the armadillo, because that is a bath that really gets back to the heart of why I love baths. It's big, it's bulky, it's impressive, and there's a lot to talk about. So thank you guys for being here. I will be back very soon with another one, and I hope you're all having a wonderful week. Bye, friends.